It's a Thursday. It is the 22nd day of August, 2024. This Day Weather Podcast brought to you by ConverseCountyTourism.com. Beautiful landscapes, historic sites, and unique downtowns await visitors to Douglas and Glen Rock, Wyoming. Plan your visit at ConverseCountyTourism.com. Well, touch cooler next couple of days. We're going to have more shower and thunderstorm activity, and unfortunately, and many of you did experience this yesterday, the wind picking up yesterday, the pressure gradient between that low coming in from the Pacific Northwest slowly pushing up against the big high in the southern plains, putting us in unfortunately a pressure gradient, which is going to lead for some of you some pretty breezy conditions here in the coming days. And monsoonal moisture is going to continue to move through. And thunderstorms in many areas through Saturday will be common. There's a southward shift of the thunderstorms, more south by later in the weekend and into early next week as that cooler, drier air pushes in late this weekend and early next week. And that cooling trend for the far west, the Pacific Northwest, California, the interior, that's still on tap through Sunday into Monday, getting over the divide by Monday. This is where the west of the divide will feel the effects of this trough in the cold front the most, especially with temperatures. As I just mentioned, gusty winds and high fire danger will be a concern here over the next several days. Late summer, grasses have dried out. We certainly still have some very, very dry areas. And you got to remember, we had a lot of growth. 2023 was a very wet year. A lot of growth, a lot of that's now dead, especially out onto the plains. And so with the lightning, as we'll show you here in a minute, being a concern along with the wind, fire dangers will be very, very high through the weekend. That stronger cold front still on tap for mid to late next week, although there's quite a bit of disagreement on the intensity of that cold front. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Now, yesterday started off innocently enough. We had beautiful sunrise conditions in some areas of the region. That high level moisture that was starting to move in yesterday made for a beautiful sunrise opportunity all across the region. Of course, you may remember that old sailor's phrase, red in the morning, sailors take warning. I don't know, maybe that was an omen yesterday for kind of what happened late yesterday afternoon in some areas. And when we take a look at time lapse of that sunrise yesterday, you can really see those colors coming in here across southeastern Wyoming yesterday. I put on a show over a large part of the region. And as we went through the day, we then started to see the buildup of the shower and the thunderstorm activity that then led to some problems later on. And there you can see, this is a great shot, not only of the clouds and a developing isolated thunderstorm right here, but a good shot of the rangeland conditions that for many areas of eastern Wyoming, western South Dakota, parts of the Nebraska Panhandle, parts of eastern Montana, western North Dakota, this very dry conditions, even though we've had some recent rains. So you can imagine what happened when we saw the thunderstorms build. And here's another great time lapse from Lusk. This ended up being quite a big thunderstorm. So you can see the folks working there, getting the helicopter ready, but in the background, a developing thunderstorm with a big rain shaft. The thunderstorms were really good rain producers, but unfortunately, they were really good at producing something else, which then led to problems later on. You can see those thunderstorms building up and getting huge east of Rapid City yesterday evening. But then a lot of you encountering smoke along Interstate 90, road closures, I-25, road closures in Wyoming due to grass fire activity as the lightning strikes. And here's one from the Bear Lodge Mountains of a lightning-induced fire that picked up in northeastern Wyoming. And there were a lot of these. Now, this is the 24-hour period from early this morning to yesterday morning. So you can see a lot of lightning activity from Mexico to Canada. Let's focus in a little bit closer. Each of these represents a single lightning strike. So you can see here in northeastern Wyoming, along and near Interstate 90, then out into the plains, a lot of lightning activity here and a lot of very dry rangeland. Hence, likely the fire starters there. A lot of lightning activity in I-25 in that Glen Rock near Douglas area that caused the wildfire activity there. So you can see there were plenty of opportunities for lightning strikes to get something started yesterday. As we take a look at the satellite imagery this morning, it looks remarkably similar to yesterday. That plume of moisture coming on up. Here's some nocturnal thunderstorms that are still going on early this morning. And there's your water vapor showing that arch. There's that drier air. So that drier air notch is going to limit thunderstorm activity there. But underneath this deeper moisture, thunderstorms and showers will be active again. The precipitable water is pretty high in those darker green and blue areas. And that's where we're going to see the most active thunderstorms here by mid to late afternoon and evening. You can see lesser activity in the drier air the further north you go. Tomorrow, the moisture expands a little bit more to the north and east, but again is quite deep. Here's the drier air that's going to start to eventually come in by the time we get into the middle to the end of the weekend. That moisture that is associated with that low off the west coast is why you have a little bit of a bullseye there. Thunderstorm activity on Friday becomes more widespread, gets further north again. Saturday, we start to see an eastward and southerly shift of the thunderstorm activity as the cooler, drier air from that trough starts to get pushing into the region. So thunderstorms are going to be more to the south and east. We'll have a little bit of activity up here, but this means some changes are coming. This is for Sunday. There's a little bit of a resurgence. There's a little bit of activity with that low pressure system here. So thunderstorms are going to be a feature in the west right on through the weekend, but it will kind of come and go. This is where we are this morning and up through the noon hour today. There's the low off the Pacific Northwest coast, the big high here over Texas. The two are in a battle, and the problem we've got with the wind is this difference in air pressure. Notice all of these lines and the difference in colors. This represents conditions at 18,000 feet, but there's a correlation to what's going to be happening on the ground. Strong southwest winds aloft were overhead yesterday as we started to see this pressure gradient form, and it's going to be overhead, this pressure gradient, today, tomorrow, Saturday into Sunday, but especially tomorrow and Saturday as the system slowly creeps eastward and the pressure gradient tightens. There you can see it. This is by 6 p.m. Saturday. The low finally starts to move, but we have strong southwest winds aloft. We have a tight pressure gradient here, so the wind is going to be a factor, whether it's leading to high fire danger, red flag warnings, or even if you're driving a high-profile vehicle, an RV, a trailer in the interior west, pretty gusty southwest winds. When you have a change in wind speed and direction, it's a sign of change coming, and that's exactly what this trough is doing. This is certainly a change from the status quo. These are the wind gusts today. Now notice the wind gusts today are strongest back here in the basin, closer to the low. The winds today across Wyoming, Montana, Colorado aren't going to be nearly as bad as yesterday. Hopefully that's going to help with the wildfire situation, especially right here. It'll be breezy, but the wind gusts won't be as bad, but that's only for one day. Tomorrow, the wind gusts start to pick up, and notice as that gradient heads east, this is where we start to see these green shaded areas. This is where the winds become more of a factor. And then on Saturday in particular, the winds are going to really be picking up. So we've got to get through here the next 3 days, I'm afraid to say, with some gusty southwest winds, and that's not going to be a good situation in terms of fire danger and conditions. There's the colder air moving into the Great Basin and the Pacific Northwest by Saturday. Notice east of the divide, still very warm. By Monday, that cooler air expands, gets a little bit east of the divide, really cools off across Montana there, across northern and western Wyoming into the Wasatch Front. So that's that first wave coming on through. The second wave is this low that's going to come up from here, go across southern Canada and across the northern tier, dragging a cold front in behind it, and that cold air will spill along and east of the divide. So I'm going to show you 3 different scenarios where we have some differences in the modeling. So we want to be careful. We don't want to over forecast this cold front. We don't want to under forecast it either. The European model is certainly showing a cool down by Thursday along and east of the divide. The Canadian's a little bit more extensive, the Canadian model. The American GFS model is a lot colder and a lot quicker. So we've got to kind of sort out the timing, but we certainly will have a taste of fall right before the Labor Day weekend. And yes, it's too early to talk about the Labor Day weekend. Don't worry, as we get closer, we'll talk about it. But we will have a cold front coming into the region before that Labor Day weekend. Have yourself a good Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow.